So on now.
At least the clock has started on those bill alarms. Sorry, at least there he is.
Hey guys. Oh, I came to my text to you then.
Yeah, no, I saw your meeting and I popped up. I was on another meeting. Figuring, if you call one, I'll just leave that one and dial in.
Yeah. Correct.
This is quick now.
I know.
What's going on?
It was back in
yesterday. You gotta get that mirror image thing there.
Yeah, the format it was sent in, the mirror thing won't change that. And so I've tried all that working with our marketing team. For some reason, she's trying to outsmart the system, and all I did was make it more complicated. You just send me the image. It automatically goes up correctly. If you try to outsmart it, then it seems to conflict. So one thing we wanted to start with, Neil, really quick thank you again for your short notice availability, and wanted to get Mitch on the call because we really want to focus on two things: the lending and Mitch has an update for that, as well as the messaging. And I know we talked this morning about engaging and the cost and everything else for bigger, but we're really seeking, we really need guidance, and we really want to start talking to people about, because we need to get much more aggressive. And one thing I wanted to start with here this morning, as we pretty good together, is I'm hoping it's pretty clear that everything we talked about last night was based on Mitch wasn't able to get the Northern extension. It became much dire, much faster, and much more extreme. If we don't sell that lumber inventory, again, it's much more severe than it was. So I hope it didn't water anything down. But having said that, Mitch, why don't we start with your initial update and then go into some of our questions to make sure we can get guidance on how we want to message what to whom.
Yeah, I got no further increase except additional inventory without having a signed bailment agreement yet. He's pretty sure the bank is pretty sure that they're going to come together on what they want. The bank wants a 7-page document. This guy wants a 2-page document. Savage does, but they're essentially saying the same thing to the finance manager over at the bank said, do it. I'll grant it provisionally because I see no reason why we won't get this across the finish line.
So right now the inventory line is they will loan 20%.
Million, yeah.
Right. So what are they increasing it to?
So right now the current value of the inventory that I've certified to them is it's only inventory that we have on hand, and it's $7.4 million, and so that gives me $1.8 million available. I can go up to 4, but I have to have more inventory, and so they're going to allow me to certify the lumber inventory that's at the third-party lumber yards, and that's about $4 million, so that'll add an additional $1 million to the availability.
You're talking about increasing the percentage of inventory?
I did. The AR is the first one they advanced 80%. He said they're much more willing to take that up. He said we could go to 85, he said we can go to 90. And what I've heard from them before in discussions is obviously they work with companies that are a little distressed. They're used to this. And so I let them know, like, listen, I've got this to explore other options for us as well, kind of for the medium and long term, that might come in, supersede. We would prepay the entire balance off to you guys. And so I'm going to be pursuing it. That's fine. But in the interim, we're willing to work with you guys to make sure that you don't run up against that. Once you start seeing it get there, call us and let's have a conversation. And I said, thank you. I said, thank you. And I said, well, let's have this gives me some breathing room today. Let's have a call in a couple weeks, and we'll explore what those additional options are. So that buys me a little time with these other banks, and buys me a little bit of time with our internal operational cash flow needs. We're going aggressive. I don't want to sit and wait. We're going to get aggressive about cutting stuff. Like that's obvious. But I'll say it anyway. But little one. So
when you get the documents, send them to me as well, because we're going to have to start doing a public disclosure once you sign those things.
Change in the lending because it's
in the it's your current credit facility, so you're gonna have to file an 8K on that one.
Well, this is the additional $4,000 of inventory certified is within the original agreement. I'm certifying more inventory to pledge against it.
Okay, that's fine, but if you are gonna do an amendment, it's gotta be filed, so.
That would probably be if they increase the advance rate, right? I think we discussed in our disclosures that the advance rate is 80% and 25% of inventory, right? But we
The
know.
eligibility of inventory not is already in the original, but if you change the percentage of eligible receivables, that would be a modification. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's within their discretion. I don't think it's specifically defined. I'd have to take another look at it, but, if they want you to do an amendment, we need to look at that amendment to see if it needs to be filed.
Yep, understood.
And then, of course, like the obvious questions of why are you doing it? Are you guys in a cash bind? I mean, that's the question your investors are going to ask, so you got to address that. Right? So, but that's why I said the other day and yesterday, it doesn't matter what the answer is from the bank. That's going to trigger disclosure. Because if they said no, you're in dire straits. If they said yes, that's good, but you're going to have to disclose it. Right? So the outcome of those discussions is a triggering event. You have to figure out how to message it, but that also depends on how good is this, and does it bridge the winter, or does it just bridge 6 more weeks?
Well, that's part of the answer to that. It's part of the actions that I need to take. We need to determine, which personnel we need to keep and which we need to shrug off. That also raises the question for me about, key employee plans to ensure that the people that we do can have incentive to stay with us through that.
Hey, Mitch, a quick comment and question on that particular topic, because there's a timely element here. I know we talked about it briefly the other day, and that is the effective date for any sort of cost of living expenses is supposed to be October 1st. And we've kind of communicated that across the board. You and I kind of debated a small nominal increase for a bigger gain, and saving a little bit for a lot of pain is probably not worth it. Mitch sent us an email, though, on the additional, merit recommendations above COLA, and you and I talked about that needs to be, pushed out, so there is no additional raises beyond the cost of living increase. Is that our standpoint, and are you communicating that with HR?
I think we need to say no. It's just the cost of living. I think we need to do something, but we're going to be paying people off. I mean, at least about 3 or 4 people, right? Immediately.
Well, that's why I wanted to bring this up too, because it all goes back to this messaging comment too, because I don't want people to get a good review and then get fired, right? That does not send the right message. That was very suspicious, and so I just want to be very clear that, we don't give a COLA raise, offer a good review, and then fire somebody. Like,
Important messaging is important. I mean, and look, you may have to tell employees, look, we're in a cash bind. We're going to give you the cost of living, but we can't do merit increases now. But we will consider doing them maybe in March or April next year. Because we're in this cash bind and we're trying to do whatever we can to bridge the gap. So how do we message that? To let people know, look, it's not a zero for this coming year. We just can't do it now, right?
with regards to the departures or terminations, is there severance? Because
that depends on your current policy. Well, your pet practice. Your pet practice, and
you should have done 1 week per year. It's kind of been,
because at the end of the day, it doesn't cost a lot of money, and you're trying to help out people who are going to be hurting, right? At least in the near term. So nobody's going to have an issue with that.
Do we have?
Especially if you're talking about 3 or 4 people, you're talking about, minor amounts of money.
Do we have any exposure with, if we message the cash fund that, we haven't publicly disclosed any of this, externally, so we're kind of bringing everyone under.
Yeah, you have to, look, whenever my CEOs had town halls, they would say, look, this is all this is all confidential stuff, and we're going to let you in on some content. We trust you all not to, go leaking it out, because that would cause problems. It would also be a violation of the terms of your employment, and then they always start to call that way, and they always end to call that way. What happens on the mile stays on the mile. What happens in this room stays in this room. And if it leaks out, there will be consequences. And not just for the individual, but for the entirety of the company. Right? Because if the stock price plummets, it just causes holy hell for everybody. So, this is not Thanksgiving table, conversation with your relatives. Right? Because that's how things leak out, right? Oh, how's work going? You're at the Thanksgiving table. Oh, I can't believe this company is in such dire straits. And all of a sudden, Uncle Joe is, texting the broker, short Jewett Cameron. And then, it's like a domino effect. And,
if we're laying people off like that,
well, that's a good, right? And everybody else is secure. So you're going to
Three times.
This is
our third. Yeah.
Well, no, I get it. Look, my prior company did 4 RIFs in a 2-year period, and every time they did one, they thought that was it, no mas, right? And they found themselves doing it again and again. The company before that, we did 1 RIF right before the pandemic. To bare bone the company, we laid off 30% of the workforce, and it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. People cried, very emotional. Yeah, it was very emotional. Because we all liked each other. We were like a big family, and it was really, really hard. And I told, the management team, my management team, I never want to do this again, ever. And then the pandemic hit like a month later. But fortunately, it was the pandemic. We didn't have to fire anybody. We didn't lose anyone to attrition. It was really good thing that we had done that a month earlier. But it was the hardest thing that I've ever had to do. So look, how you message that, it's up to you. Nobody can say with certainty this is a one and done type of risk, but we don't anticipate any further, right, in the near term. So,
how do we go about through this? The perception is going to be that they are a third in a year, essentially, cash crunch, and we're cutting back and playing games. People are going to get scared.
Look, people understand a lot of it has to do with the tariffs, right? A lot of it has to do with the expectations going into the calendar year were pretty high. And everybody understands that. You're not the only one in this situation. I've spoken to 2 other companies I know that are in very similar situations. The tariffs are just crushing them.
Well, what about? Yes, you're right.
Yes, you're right. People should understand that the economics and the fundamentals of our business have changed.
But that includes, really taking a look at who's essential and who's not. And, when things pick up and you're back in growth mode, it'll be a different company. You're going to come out of this a lot stronger. And, you could allude to the fact that the company is doing everything it can, right? Everything it can think of to right-size the company, turn the ship around, and so forth. Don't be specific, obviously. Don't say, we're considering some public information. That's board-only level stuff.
What about?
Yeah.
So what about retention?
Retention? Do we?
I wouldn't mention it at this time because you don't know if you're going to go into bankruptcy and you're going to need a retention plan. Once that looks like a real possibility, more so than it does today, I think that's when you
queued up, though, should we be ready to do? Is that something that one of the first
the exercise that you need to do on retention plans and incentive plans are to assess every employee of the company and see which ones are essential to keep this business running, and which people, if you lost them, have different categories of people, right? You're going to have, executive management, and you're going to have, like in my prior company, we had 120 people, 25% of them were vice presidents.
Wow.
And that was because we were, an 800-person company at one point, and everyone left, but the vice presidents all stayed, But what the reason is that the vice presidents can do so much more than the line worker guys, right? So they could do like 3 different people's jobs, right? So that's why we kept those people. They were more valuable, but in the end, they were more expensive, right? So we had to assess every individual, their job functions, what capacity did they have to take on other job functions. So if we fired, Mr. X, you know what I'm saying? And those are the people that we targeted to keep and provided incentive bonus at the end of the rainbow. So it wasn't like I got upfront money. It was deferred comp.
Yeah, part of my concern there is, you keep mentioning, the Chapter 11 or 7 for that matter, and the retention bonus, but what if we use the cash to try to, liquidate the company on our own terms afterwards? What do we do to try to incent people to stay for that? Because I feel like that's also a risk in this trajectory.
Yeah, of course. That's why the plan that you'll put in place will be prior to the bankruptcy, but knowing that you're going to fund. And what you'll tell these folks is, right before the bankruptcy, you'll have a messaging that, look, we're going to file Chapter 11 tomorrow, and you'll give them an idea of what that process is, what their incentive comp is going to look like if they stick around and, continue to run the business. And that, we believe we can come out of this a stronger company, right, that's poised for growth. Right, because you're not going to go into bankruptcy, Chad, without a plan. If you don't have a plan for the future beyond the bankruptcy, then you're just going to liquidate. Then you're Chapter 7, you're just going to close up shop, everyone's going to leave, and this thing's going to be sold for a fire sale money, right? I mean, what you guys do is not so unique where you're going to have a lot of buyers who want your assets, right? My company was different because we had patented drugs that only we could produce and sell in Parkinson's and MS, and people wanted that. So it had a little bit, right, because it was patent protected. So that IP was worth a lot. So we had a lot of interest in buying the company, and we knew that it would, at least that part of the company would survive, even though it was without us. Your company's a little different, and when you look at what is valuable in your company, right? So you got your properties, okay, great, but the bottom feeders are going to come in, they're going to lowball, right? You got your inventory. You're looking to sell your inventory today at 50 cents on the dollar. What do you think it's going to go for when you're in bankruptcy?
Yeah.
It's going to go for like 10 cents on the dollar, right?
So part of what I think Chad was asking was necessarily directly to the bankruptcy. I think we understand that we would need a retention plan there. But if we're doing drastic cuts, a third reduction in force, and we're telling people, we're going to get through this. My HR manager, you need to kind of divert their attention. He's freaking out. Right. My accountants are freaking out. I need to do. Can I have a retention policy in place
today
to keep those
people through tough times.
No. The reason is because the bankruptcy court will set that aside, that it's not worth the paper it's written on.
Okay.
But what you can tell them is that the company and the board are considering retention or incentive types of plans.
So you're kind of planting a seed of...
And when we have more color on that, we'll let you know. But right now, we are considering it. But the problem with, even the problem with employment agreements, right? In bankruptcy, they're thrown in the garbage. I had it 2 years of bankruptcy, it was worthless. Zero. Right? So you can put an incentive plan in place today, but a bankruptcy court, is going to throw that in the garbage.
Again, though, just to clarify on that detail, is that if you don't go into bankruptcy, you add the value. If you do go into bankruptcy, isn't there a chance that there will be another retention program put in place that will be different than what we offered originally?
You've got to be in place prior to the bankruptcy. So, and that's what I think you need the Baker.
Well, yeah.
Ones,
So
right?
I guess that's my point, though, is that I guess if we're heading down that path, and it's going to alter...
It may be. Yeah, it may be, but I think that the bankruptcy, the plans relating to bankruptcy are a little bit different than your normal everyday incentive, right? Because there are different triggers on the normal incentive plan for you guys. Just forget the bankruptcy. Just in the normal course would be, hey, listen, if you stay through, December 31, you'll earn X, right? Bankruptcy is a little bit different, right? Because while there may be an outside target date, it'll say to get us through the bankruptcy process, right? Which is a different animal than just putting some arbitrary date down. Right, so I think you're right. We probably can message it, but what that plan will look like when it actually is rolled out to the company, I think you should get Baker's advice on that one.
Okay. Yeah, and on that note, too, you said engage them and they'll need a retainer. Does all that have to happen before we can talk to them next? Because I just feel the urgency of talking to them about things like that.
Yeah, I sent her all the conflict check information yesterday, like all your subsidiaries, all your officers and directors' names. I sent that all to her yesterday, just say you should do a conflict check. I think you guys are going to engage you. So I can communicate with her today and ask her how she wants to proceed. The conflict checks usually take 24 hours, so I assume they've got all that done today, and I can ask her next steps would be an engagement letter and, working out some fee arrangement, right? But my guess is that she'd be willing to talk to you even without that in place.
Yeah.
She's just a nice person, and, if I ask her to, she will.
All right.
We just developed a relationship over the last 3 years.
Yeah, no, I understand. So, they're lenders.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what I'll do, Chad, is I'll put together essentially a script, and I'll need to track down our copy of our standard NDA.
Okay.
Where did that list get generated from? Was that a recommendation from Neil, or is that something that
he sent that list. Okay. So again, he said, hey, the first time he sent it, he just said Hercules and that's SVB, but then he followed up quickly with an email with others that he's worked with in the past. So
right.
If we want to generate other leads or talk to other people, we can. For me, urgency was like, hey, let's just start with these. They tend to focus on microcap in situations like this, well then let's just go with those. You could probably put in AI and find others like that, maybe in Northwest and things like that, if you think that might be a viable option. But I'll talk to Cascadia as well.
Yeah, I spoke to the company guys, whether or not they'd be willing to represent you. And they said you were too small, and I just saw a feed in my LinkedIn that they just announced that they did this $6.7 billion deal.
Oh, wow.
That they represented. So you guys are a little bit too small for that.
And what are these? I mean, just as I divide what the script is, I guess I need to figure out who to call, right? Just call their 800 number, do I?
Yeah, right. So I can get you contacts at both SVB, their Inc., or whatever folks I gave you. I can dig up those contacts. And Blair said she's got some contacts as well for, rescue debt and other things. So she can certainly pull that together. So you have, you can mention our name, so-and-so gave me your contact info, give an NDA and our, company deck. Right, so you should kind of have a company introductory deck prepared, kind of like an investor deck, right? What I sent to Blair for just our diligence on you guys was your last 10Q and the investor deck, Chad. I think that you guys did with Latham in May. Right, we did an investor deck back in May that I had a final version of. So I sent that to Blair just so she can read up about your company.
Yeah, that's good.
Right, so I think those two items, right, so that's your most recent public financials. It's an investor deck that you've approved and put out in the past. I think those two things you can probably, send to folks, to learn more about your company. But once you sign the NDA, you can get into what's happened since May, right? Because I think your last, it was the May quarter, but you filed with what's happened since July. And how the tariffs have impacted you. The good news is that your current bank's willing to help you out a bit, but you need more help. Right? So it's not like we're in desperation mode. We're going to liquidate tomorrow if we can't bail out and take out the existing debt. The good news is your current bank's willing to work with you, so that's a really positive thing. But you need a little bit more than that to get you to the spring season where you can count on some serious cash flow. And again, 9 months from now or 8 months from now, when that season begins, it's likely you will have sold those properties, right? So that's an additional, cash infusion. So, the story that you, I think, justifiably can tell is we got to get through the next few, and then we can execute on our larger strategic plan, which is divesting ourselves of the non-core assets. We're doing the deal with Alpine West, right? I think that's critical to do that deal. And even though it's a neutral thing right now today, it's not dragging you down. It could increase the bottom line significantly if those guys can throw a couple more bodies than you can at it, right, and devote the time and resources to getting that done.
You're talking about Greenwood?
Yeah.
So
that's part of the story, right? That's part of divesting the non-core assets in a way that gives you immediate cash plus an upside if they buy the business and a continuing royalty stream. Right? That's part of the story.
Yeah, so that's what I was trying to mention, DJ, when I was talking about, I just need that credit completed so that they could solve that drying problem that Greenwest. And so they've signed another NDA with their CFO, so I'll be reaching out to them today to find out next time we can talk and try to get, because they haven't responded yet on the terms, but again, that's part of the storyline for sure, Mitch, is to keep that in the back of your mind.
I think that's a really good part of the storyline because that is cash, right? Yes, it could be, at first an outsource arrangement, but with that option to purchase and a continuing royalty stream, if they go for that, that's a good story. Well, for that business, right? Part of the monetize that business.
Part of
the decisions that we're making today may hurt our future ability, right? I mean, we are holding off on paying critical suppliers overseas that produce our metal products. And desired price increases from I have customers taking price increases yet from the original tariffs that went in place in February. Home Depot was refusing today or refusing still to take a 10% price increase. And so at this point, I'm telling my finance guy to take the 7% that they're offering, get it across the board so that we can bury this and move forward and deal with the consequence later. That may hurt some of that valuation that comes in from trying to liquidate the assets that trademark as an example, right? Like if that probably is probably the most, the lucky dog thing is nothing. Really, there's nothing there. Just to get trademark is real, and it's a quality product, right? But all the time we don't know them. But the relationship to distribute is probably. So I don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's part of the justification for speaking to these people is that, you don't want to be in a situation where you can't pay your suppliers to get you set up for that spring season, right? I mean, that's part of the story, right? Yeah, you're gonna delay things for now, but that's one of the reasons that you're talking to them. Yeah. That's part of the gap you need to bridge. Right, because you got to pay these guys so they can start working on stuff, so you're prepared for that selling season. Right, that's part of your story.
Yep. That's good. Thank you. Always nervous about what I can and should say, even under an NDA.
I mean, look, banks understand how supply chain works. Right, you got to get purchase orders in months in advance. They understand. Junkie public does not understand them. But these types of things all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, so that's why you do this, right? So you can make those purchases that you need to today to position you for the spring season.
So with the list of lenders there, you're going to send a few contacts, and then the others, I forget her name. Blair, thank you. She was going to provide. Okay.
I'll contact Blair when you get off this call and ask her for whatever her.
Just another question for you. The contracts with Northrim. Is there anything that I think you remember someone that you had initially signed it. We went through back and forth with a bunch of things, but is there anything in there that you see that a landmine or really?
Let me pull it up real quick because
my view, I read the other day again. I didn't see anything in there that indicated that I've got any hard financial covenants. I've got things that say I have to have insurance to cover it. We can't get other debt without their authorization, right? Things like that.
Yeah, let me. Because I highlighted stuff in yellow here, so let me just pull up the agreement. So, there's a couple things I highlighted that I wouldn't even bring up, right? So, one of the things is that this is a representation you made when you signed the agreement, which is correct, and I wouldn't worry about it. It says that you are an ongoing business concern that is not insolvent. Which is true at the time.
Yep.
There's no change in ownership, I wouldn't worry about that. Just looking at the default provision, which is paragraph 46. So if you commence a bankruptcy or insolvency proceeding, that goes without saying. But then if you look at G and H of section 46, it says, if the bank with commercially reasonable cause and good faith determines that its ownership of the purchased accepted account sealant is impaired for any reason whatsoever, provided that they give you notice of the right to cure within 10 days. So I think your receivables are good, so that probably is okay, right? Because that talks about impairment of the receivables themselves. So I think your customer base is pretty solid. I don't think that's an issue. And then it says performance under this agreement is impaired. That's the one that concerns me the most.
Yeah.
Because there's no cure period. It's kind of like very subjective. But from a negotiating point of view, if you waive that to negotiate that out, they're going to get really suspicious and spooked. So I probably would leave that alone. And that's something you can probably contest and drag that out for a while. The 22% default rate I wouldn't worry about, because if you're in default, it's kind of irrelevant. It wasn't a bad agreement, right, that you guys negotiated. I'm just looking at the inventory loan addendum. Again, it's just 25% eligible inventory means, right? Which I think is what you're doing. Any deterioration or impairment of the collateral or any decline in appreciation in the value of the collateral. So, that's an event of default under the inventory line, but I don't think there's anything you can do about that one. Right, so clearly,
What line is that?
That is section 4.1B. So it's under events of default on page 4. Right, so if you disclose your precarious financial condition, it may have an impact on the value of your inventory.
We were talking about
that because we have
$3 million
worth of inventory that we're calling slow with thing that we're trying right now.
Right, but when your accountant's saying about that, right? I mean, if your accountants are willing to certify that that's the value of that inventory, you're good to go. But if they want you to take an impairment charge on that inventory, for whatever reason, because it's been on the books for 3 years and you haven't moved it, that's a different matter. But that's more of an accounting focused issue.
That's my specialty,
Neil, is that discussion.
What the board has directed us to do is get rid of that stuff and liquidate it. Right now we're selling something that's 50% of cost to Costco. And so I'm 50% against that inventory for that purpose. The auditors are going to look at it, they're going to like that, but they're going to say, well, what about all the rest of this stuff? You guys have always said you're going to sell it at above cost, and we can see that you're starting to sell it. That would impair the balance to $7.4 million that I'm certifying to the bank.
Right. Yeah, so you don't want to be in a situation where you're certifying to the bank 1 month and the following month you're taking a write-down. Because that would trigger this default provision.
Okay. Then I need to be careful about this because this is exactly what I'm doing.
Right. I'm just saying, you're giving Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, or Costco a fire sale price today, but you're withholding the balance of the inventory which is worth more.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, to sell it in a ordinary course type of sale would take a little bit longer and would not command that kind of discount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the point here is you're not going to negotiate that provision out. And these are the things I've highlighted in this agreement. So I think your agreement is pretty good. The default provisions are not as onerous as a lot of other default provisions I've seen. So I don't know that I would renegotiate other parts of the thing.
Okay.
It's really the commercial terms that you're most concerned about.
Well, this one kind of burned down. You're right.
I understand that, but if you were to do an orderly liquidation of that inventory. Right? You wouldn't be selling it below cost. It would just take a little more time to unload it. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's your story to the auditors is, you have this immediate cash need, but the other stuff you can liquidate over a longer period of time at cost or better.
Okay.
So it's on the books at cost right now, right?
It is on the books at cost, and that's what I'm certifying, but I also have the obsolete inventory reserve, which I'm increasing, because of that's what the auditors are gonna do, is they're gonna look at it and say, well, you're selling it at 50%, and I'm gonna say, yeah, fire sale, trying to get rid of it, I increase the reserve to accommodate that, but, we still assert that in the normal course of business, the value of this inventory is above cost, right? So from a gap standpoint, I'm putting lower, essentially making a short-term decision that we're doing it at lower cost for market, and the market's lower, which is why I'm doing a reserve.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I understand, and your auditors can see that. I wouldn't be too concerned about it today. I mean, things will change, Mitch, between now and then, when they're ready to certify your audit at the end of November.
Yeah.
2 months is a long time, and things may change dramatically between now and then. So it's either going to be good or bad. But I don't think we need to speculate today what's going to happen 2 months from now.
All right.
On that topic.
Okay. All right.
I mean, the auditors will do what they do, but they'll do it in connection with the audit. And it'll be 2 months down the road, and you might be in a much, much different position. Good or bad, it'll just be much different, and it won't matter today.
Yeah. As we're talking about the audit, is there anything that I need to let my auditors know right now, in your opinion?
They signed, right?
Yes.
Through
August 31st.
Yeah, right, but the 10K speaks as of the day it's filed. Right, everything that happens from August 31 until it's filed is a subsequent event.
Yeah.
It may impact the year-end financials.
Yeah.
Right, so they can look at events in the first quarter and make you take write-downs from the prior year because of what happened in the first quarter.
Yes.
I mean, you know better than I am, an accountant. Just be transparent with them. Answer their questions. The situation will shake itself out over the next 30 days.
But I don't even notify them.
No, not right now. They're going to ask you for your going concern opinion memo, right? I don't think you'd like that type of information.
It would be closer towards the end of the audit. They're going to look at stuff.
Yeah, just to think in the normal course. And I think 30 days from now, the situation, plus or minus, will be dramatically different.
Well, they're going to be on site in 2 weeks doing their audit work. And if we execute on what we need to execute on, the feeling in this office, they're going to pick up on the tenor of the body language very quickly. That we've done another reduction of force, that we're managing our EP, right? Because that's a risk for them. They're going to be diving into making sure that we're not under-reporting our liabilities or over-reporting our assets.
The only measures are subsequent to year-end, right?
Right.
So it's not going to impact the August 31 audit. That's and good. But there will be subsequent event triggers for them that they'll want to investigate further. But look, my view on that is, you'll have that conversation in the ordinary course, which takes you to the second half of October.
Okay.
And you'll be truthful and transparent with them about what's going on. And we'll know more about that in the next 2 weeks as well.
Yeah.
And they'll know that you've increased your bank line. They'll probably ask you about it, once you do the public disclosure.
Yeah.
Right? like, what was that all about? Why did you do that? Well, look, we're having some cash issues. We're delaying payments to vendors. At that point, you'll know if you're negotiating additional credit lines from other companies. You can tell them what's going on, and they'll recognize right away that you have a going concern problem. Look, we understand that, and we understand there may be a going concern opinion issue here.
Yep.
But let's deal with that in November when we have a better handle on whether or not we're getting these alternative sources of financing. It may not take away the going concern opinion, but it may give us some breathing room to get to, wherever it is we need to go. So you can only tell them what you know, right? And I wouldn't really speculate as to the future. So, today you're going to be in a much different seat 2 weeks from now than you are